Started. So maximizing your website's potential with powerful design and branding strategies. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Dan Jenkins. I'm the commercial director here at Wagada Digital. I've been with the agency now for around, I think, seven or more years. But yeah, it's not all about me. I'm part of a growing team of around 26 specialists across 3 locations. This is some of our team you can see here in Cheltenham. But we are a full service digital agency. We've been making the complex simple since 2011. We're an award-winning digital marketing agency. We've got offices in London, St Albans, and here in Cheltenham, where I'm zooming in from today. We have everything in one place, and we offer 4 core services, which is digital marketing, website design, HubSpot, and employer branding. When I send the follow-up, I'll make sure that you get links if you'd like to find out more about any of these services. But obviously today we're going to be talking much more about the top 2, really. Digital marketing, brand and design, but in particular the crossover with website. So in a moment, I'm going to hand you over to my colleague, Prue. Now, Prue is going to introduce herself and then talk you through some big brand takeaways from sort of the last year, learnings from 2024, and how we can take those forward in 2025. We're going to be talking about brand and creativity. And then in the second half of the session, I'm going to be kind of lifting the lid on current and future website design trends. So I'm going to be talking you through the changing face of kind of user engagement, where brands are moving with their website, and things to consider so that you can take all that lovely blue sky thinking and creativity from Prue's first part of the session, and then start to think about what you might be considering for your own brand or your own brand's online presence, and in particular website, in the second half of the session as well. Brilliant. So that's it from me for now. Prue, over to you.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks very much. Hello, everyone. Lovely to see you all. My name is Prudence. I am a senior digital marketer, and I have experience in branding, graphic design, and photography. So I'm really excited to share with you the importance of brand and design when it comes to your website. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it off. So let's first talk about what is brand. So Jeff Bezos, he talks about brand and says that your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And you might be thinking, okay, well, what does this mean exactly? Well, the way I see it is it's kind of an amalgamation of all of these beliefs, feelings, attitudes, like these expectations that people as a collective kind of hold about you and your business, or think personal branding. It's all about these kind of associations that people have about you. Now, when we think about good design, so good design for me gets people from the other side of the road, other side of the street, to come over and read some boring bit of text. Okay, that's what good design does. If you can get someone to cross over the road to come to you and read the poster that you've designed, then you've done your job. So what has this got to do with websites then? Well, it's all about the impression you give and that user experience. So both your branding and clever design can kind of help entice your audience, and not just entice them, but convert them into paying customers. So the power of good branding and design can actually transform that whole experience. So kind of think of your website as your shop front. That's how I kind of see it. How do you want people to feel when they walk in, when they come to you? How do you want them to interact and feel when they get to your website? Let's think of a shop, Marks and Spencer's. When thinking of that shop front, people in Marks and Spencer's want it to be convenient. They don't want you to be stressed out. They want you to feel empowered. So this shop front, kind of this whole experience, reflects that. And your website needs to do the same. Using your brand and those design elements, you should be able to achieve this. So I'm going to start by looking at someone called Sabrina Carpenter. Now, you may or may not have heard of her, but for some background information, she's a very successful woman. This year, she released 5 albums prior to this chart-topping success that she's got from her new album, Short and Sweet, which includes Espresso, which went viral on TikTok and social media, making her this global sensation. She's the first female artist to occupy the 2 top positions. So she's record-breaking, So, but why is she doing so well now, right? Why not the other five albums? It's all about personal branding, and this strong brand identity. You know, she lent into this, lent into her PR, lent into what people saying about her. She really refined her style. She has this kind of hyper feminine, really strong brand identity, this really retro image, you know. It's consistent on her music videos, in her concerts, her performances, her public appearances, her imagery on social media. You know, she curates this very strong brand, this very strong image, and she uses social media and online platforms to kind of connect with people. You know, behind the scenes, participating in viral trends. She basically used all of these platforms, all of these things available to her to rebrand and revitalize her image, which also attracted a much more broader and mature audience. So with your brand, you can, you know, attract more and different people to kind of ensure. Why am I talking to you about Sabrina Carpenter? Well, Sabrina Carpenter's strategy, her brand strategy is, I think, brilliant. It encompasses musical innovation, image transformation, and this strong visual aesthetic, as well as these strategic partnerships, and also encompasses fan engagement to create this really strong brand that people buy into. You know, in a rebrand isn't just visual, it's about narrative, timing, audience, you know, this connection that you build. So moving on then to another rebrand that we hopefully all know, we are a little bit more familiar with, is the Jaguar's controversial rebrand. So this was when they kind of shifted from heritage and luxury to a much more modern electric first identity. So without being rude, no one is driving a Jaguar. Okay, if it's a leading car, it's a petrol. It's, you know, if it's a petrol car, it's BMW, it's Audi. You know, if it's electric, it's probably Tesla. You know, their target audience, the people who they're speaking to, they're not driving a Jag anymore. So what should you do? What should you do if your target audience aren't going to you anymore, aren't using you, they're finding other people? Well, if you're Jaguar, you find a new tribe. You know, Jaguar realized their target audience didn't exist anymore. The people who they speak to didn't really like them, and they weren't aligned. So they decided to speak to new people, the future. You know, they've updated their product. So update your product and find new people to market to and align it with the modern day values, or don't. That's completely up to you. But I think it's about knowing your audience, okay, and kind of branding, and creating this identity, that really resonates with them.
It's interesting, Prue. I think you and I share an opinion on this. I'd love to know other people's opinion in the chat, but it had a
Mm,
lot of the initial reaction was one of, oh, what are they doing? This is terrible, or like, or it's completely misunderstanding the audience. And then actually there's a strong argument that it really doesn't take long for the right kind of audience to adapt to this brand, and that it's actually going to work very, very effectively for them in the long run. Again, it's, as you said, it's had a polarizing reception, but ultimately I think they were in a position as a business where they needed to do something dramatic with their brand. They took a dramatic leap. It was a significant
definitely.
change, but the aim is for it to resonate with a completely perhaps different audience than the audience that was engaging with the brand previously.
Yeah, and I think no matter what the opinion is, I think the rebrand made a noise. Whether what noise that was is kind of up to you, but it definitely made a noise, and that kind of speaks volumes for it as well. Um, so yeah, I do think this Jaguar have decided to kind of come up with a new brand identity that kind of reflects the generation of today, like it or not, up to you. Okay, so people buy from people. So I wanted to touch briefly on kind of short form content. They call it the attention currency. So these are really strong examples of how to make your brand stand out. So short form content on your socials, but also, you know, on your website as well to help portray your brand. Um, so I just wanted to have an example here of Duolingo. So they have this unhinged mascot basically, and what they do is their kind of TikTok account is run by this green owl duo who behaves like this chaotic social media influencer. And they kind of capitalize on trending audio and memes and cultural moments. Like Duo the Owl kind of flirting with pop stars, like Dua Lipa, if you guys know her. Um, it's very playful, kind of threatening users who don't complete their language lessons and things like that. It's kind of entertaining. People follow them for kind of humor, not just the product. So again, we're looking at brands that kind of engage with their audience. They engage with comments and make people feel part of the inside joke. They don't push sales. They focus on making people enjoy their brand. So it's almost like, have fun with it if you can. Make people get to know you and get to know your brand, and if you can, find some enjoyment out of that.
True. Just quickly on that, I've had a question come through on how to translate that into more of a B2B setting. So somebody's just messaged me privately on that. And I think that's really interesting, isn't it? Because you and I were also talking about kind of LinkedIn feeds, the changing face of LinkedIn in terms of short form content. What's your view on if I guess you're tackling I don't know, a more serious subject matter, or you're trying to resonate with board level directors, but you want to kind of have a dynamic, engaging kind of brand and personal brand. What's your view on how you can utilize short form content in that context as well?
Well, I think, yeah, short form content doesn't always have to be entertaining. It can be. There are a lot of B2B businesses that are humorous and are funny, but I appreciate, we can't always have a mascot. But I do think to engage with short form video is really good to build that trust. And I think maybe there's lots of ways that you could do it, but maybe one of the ways that you could do it is just by talking quite briefly on maybe your pain points of your customers, or maybe we want to talk about your values as a brand, your mission as a brand, as a company, what your what your why, why are you doing what you're doing? That's
But the
that
key,
that
I guess, is the attention span and
Yeah, yeah,
and the
but
shift
just
towards short form content and
making it, yeah,
engagement. Yeah,
short and sweet. So it
yeah.
could just be like, what are your missions and why in 30 seconds. So yeah. But yeah, if you have any more questions, I can always come up with some more ideas, and we can maybe have a bit of discussion at the end as well. Um, so this is an example from Wagada as well. So it's just kind of looking at so I guess as well, to answer the question, looking at video as a way to connect people with people. I think that's what this kind of does. This idea of having so basically, should I play the video? See if that will does it play? No. Knew this would happen. Sorry about this, guys. So basically, it's a video of what we did for Tony's Chocolonely, and it's essentially just a really short video of someone getting chucked a piece of paper, and they open it up, and inside is a note that's kind of about winning a free chocolate for your work bestie. It's about 30 seconds long, but it's very engaging. It's very kind of authentic. It really kind of connects people with the brand. And so we'll send this round later, and hopefully you can check it out. Or head over to oh, is that
It's
who do
it's
you
a
know?
collaboration with Precision Proco, wasn't
Precision,
it? It was the
yeah,
Precision
Precision,
Proco and Tony Chocolonely collab. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So head over to their TikTok as well if you want to check it out. It's just a good example. Okay, so something to be aware of as well is social search and AI searching. So, more and more people are finding your websites through other means. So I guess that's just something to be aware of and bear it in mind. So there's a shift from kind of Google to TikTok and ChatGPT as search engines. So that is something to be aware of. People use TikTok for recommendations and kind of discovery. So when they're on there, I think it's important that brands are on there too, so that you're being visible. And as well, like AI tools like ChatGPT can provide search results. So as well as kind of, we do that here, we can help you be shown up in those kind of AI results as well. So it's just something to think about, because some companies are already getting leads from AI. So I think, that's going to have an impact on brands. But the key takeaway is that your SEO strategy needs to be, needs to expand beyond Google, basically. And you need to think about AI search and how you're going to work with that
Yeah.
and be shown in that.
Just on that as well, which I think is really interesting, is the balance between not only being visible on, so Google's changing, and obviously Google is now favoring AI results. We've got this rich content, kind of at the top above the fold. So now that we've got ads, we've got snippets, we've got AI generated results that are in a way taking traffic away from websites. There's that consideration and how you're kind of getting your website ready in the future for AI search. And then as you highlighted there, there's also the actual AI platforms and channels and tools that people are using now to search. So a few years ago, we were talking about, I guess, kind of Gen Z and starting to change their online behavior and
Yeah.
search through social media channels, especially for commerce, for product purchases. But what we're seeing more and more now is not just that, but as you say, it's Claude, it's ChatGPT, and it's interesting that Pre mentioned there about we've seen our own clients. I'm not going to name clients, but clients that are starting to see would track conversions now for commerce, and these are B2B and B2C, right the way back to the engagement now on AI engines, so that people are actually not purely using Google, but using AI engines. So again, it's part. I don't think we're in that place where by this time next week we're going to see brands going, "Oh my goodness, I've just lost 20% Google traffic," and everybody's coming through. But we see those early adoption signs, and I think it's more that, isn't it, Prue? So it's like we're looking at what's happening now, and then we go, right, well, if the signs are there, what's going to be happening in 18 to 24 months or 3 to 5 years? And so that's what I think is interesting, is that we're able to start to see these changing, consumer behaviors, customer behaviors, user engagement, and it's starting to shift. And I think that's what's important.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Dan. Okay. Politics in marketing. Right. Don't worry, don't worry. It's not going to be too controversial, promise. We're going to keep it light. Okay, so big tech has played kind of quite a big role in politics, this, especially this year. Social media bosses, Musk, Zuckerberg, they're kind of shaping platforms based on political influence. Um, Brands are kind of we're actually seeing that brands are taking a stand, which may terrify some of you or may make you feel happy. It's one of those. Um, so more kind of companies are aligning values with social political movements. I know some brands have actually come off X, previously known as Twitter. There's a shift in kind of consumer expectations. So Gen Z and millennial expect brands to have a clear stance on issues. They kind of expect brands to talk about these things and have kind of an opinion on it. Obviously not getting too political, but you know, policy shift, misinformation kind of X has removed policies on misinformation about COVID-19. There's Twitter and X that Twitter/X policy shift under Musk has caused quite the controversy. So I guess by aligning yourself with X, with Twitter, I think it's something to think about in terms of like the social political environment that's going on. So it's I don't know if you guys have heard, but X's policies have basically changed. So misinformation about COVID-19, elections, and crisis has taken kind of a softer approach to enforcement. Hate speech, while there is protections against misgendering and dead naming, have been reduced, and other provisions on like violent speech have been kind of extended. So if you don't know a lot about that, I would definitely encourage you to research more about that and find out a little bit more. But I also thought it was, before I go on too much about it, I also thought X was quite a good example of a bad rebrand, because we are still calling it Twitter. So Twitter was a really good rebrand in that it was so good we're still calling it Twitter. And X, clearly there's some kind of what's the word? People aren't jumping on board on this. So I just wanted to highlight maybe that actually, in terms of a rebrand, this might not be a very good one. But I guess the key takeaways is that brands are no longer just business. Okay, you're part of the cultural conversation, and I think it's important to say something. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
say nothing.
Do you think that crosses over with ESG as well? So, like more and more we're seeing, I mean, we've run campaigns whereby there is a share, a two-pronged goal of kind of the commercial outcome of that campaign, but also the importance to communicate a message of ESG and brand values and how the two kind of cross over. So
Yeah,
what are your
definitely.
I know we're talking more politics here, but also that trend, I guess it
Sorry,
translates
guys.
to kind of no, but in terms of like website content, ESG, ways to position yourself, what's your thought in terms of that side of things and how
Yeah,
brands need
definitely.
to perhaps be alert to that in 2025?
Yeah, it doesn't need to be explicit. You
Yeah,
don't have to put I heart political leader, or it's nothing quite that explicit. But in terms of, yeah, your ESGs, where you stand, what are the issues that you're trying to solve in the world? How are you as a business trying to help? And I think good examples are, maybe you're a woman in leadership and you're looking to help women in employment, like having those kind of political values, I think help that buying decision, and kind of having those values and having what you stand, and what you believe in on your website it helps people to understand where their money going, who their money going to, why you're doing what you're doing. All of these kind of factors really kind of really drive decision. A lot of Gen Z and millennials, and I'm talking about those, but I'm sure there's everyone in the world don't want to buy from bad brands. They don't want to buy from people who are doing bad things. So, by expressing what it is that you do and the values that you stand for, you're attracting your tribe, you're attracting the right audience. And I think it is really important because a lot of brands are doing it as well. They're just not necessarily talking about what it is that they are doing. So I think it is important to make sure that that is coming across. And I think it can really, really help with your branding, with your target audience, with
yeah,
buyers. Yeah.
yeah,
So that does actually lead me quite nicely onto longer decision-making cycles. So, I'm the buying process is lengthening. What that comes down to really is kind of economy, I guess. There's more stakeholders involved, tighter budgets, a risk aversion, the need for, there's a real need for a deeper nurturing and kind of that trust building, which is something that your website can really, really help with. Um, and I think you know, it- website is more important than ever as that shop front. It needs to entice, and not just entice, but convert. Sorry, focusing on kind of long-term relationship buildings versus quick conversion, leveraging that thought leadership, and that kind of consistent engagement throughout. So I guess the key takeaway here is that decision makers need more touch points than ever. Brands must nurture, educate, and build trust over time. So websites need to lead by example. So when I come to your website, I need to kind of get a feeling of what you are and what you do. And that is kind of, it's such an important touch point that it needs to be right. You need to get it right. Okay, so Dan, over to you with the evolving state of AI in marketing. Are you talking about
yeah.
the marketing side?
So there's been a couple of questions come through as well. So I
Okay,
might
sorry.
no, it's good. I might touch upon it because they're connected. Um so first of all, coming back to the website, there was a question that came through which was how do you prepare a website for AI search? Now that's really interesting. That's a really interesting point. So um basically, I think so. There's a number of sides to that. So one is we want to make sure that we're able to kind of monitor what our website's doing and what our website is doing in AI search, right? So now you can trace back. So there's tools. We use tools like SE Ranking. There's tools like SEMrush. There are tools that will demonstrate to you how visible your site is in other channels as well, and that's really important. So you start to get a measure of that. There's also then tracing back as much as you can in things like GA4, or whatever you're using, so Google Analytics, or whatever you're using in order to track your traffic and your engagement and your customer journey. So in the first instance, I'd say it's worth starting to look at how you're performing on those channels. The next step in that is that, interestingly, at the moment at least, especially with Google and Google AI search, where we're seeing that AI content at the top, the philosophies and the tactics that have been there now for a while on how to rank well on Google still translate in terms of how to rank well on Google search, right? So Google's message on that is if you're ranking well, if you're visible, if you're doing the right things, if you're doing what we call white hat SEO, which is all about rich quality content that's authentic and educates and builds trust and you name it, then it will also translate to how the algorithm looks at you from an AI perspective. Now, that's Google's kind of angle on that. That's Google's take on that. And that's something that you need to consider. But one other thing I would say is that AI search, especially, think about informational content at the moment. So think about the higher up the funnel type content. How do I do this? What is this? What is the best way to achieve this? Think of that informational type of thing. And that's what we've seen with snippets and featured content and things on Google for a while. So if you've got a landing page, let's say I'm going to use a really off the bat example here. Let's say you've got a landing page on, let's say you're a B2B software brand, okay? On that service-driven page, have you got questions and answers and rich content and information on processes and things that are a bit more higher up the funnel, as well as those lovely CTAs of, inquire now, book a demo, book a meeting, you name it. And then you're giving yourself that better chance to appear in these kind of AI snippets. So however you approach this, and I could do a whole webinar and we barely even scratch the surface on how to get ready for AI search, right? But what I think you need to consider is, as I say, the two strands to that. One is kind of Google as a major search engine and how to appear in the AI features and snippets and that side of things. And then also how to start thinking about other channels and how people are searching and not just purely restricting that search to Google. So that's something to think about there. Another question that came in privately, so we'll touch upon it before we leap into the next section, is recommendations for brands that represent multiple brands. So the most, Prue, I'd love to know your thoughts on this as well. Just to quickly jump in, I think it's about the balance of kind of house of brands and branded house. So whether you are like Procter and Gamble, where you've then got all of these brands that come under that with a clear brand identity, or if you're a core brand with kind of different products and services and offerings that sort of come off that. Prue, do you have any thoughts in terms of how to retain clarity as a brand if you are in a situation where you are a brand that has multiple brands? I mean, there's so many different ways to approach it, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a very big question. Really good question, actually. It is a really good question. And I'm not sure there's one hard and fast, like right answer for it. But I guess for me, I think it's about consistency. I think like look at Apple. I think Apple's a really good example of this because they have quite a lot of different products. So you've got
Mm.
the iPhone, the iPod,
Pad,
sorry, yes.
iMac, the
So
MacBook, the MacBook Pro. Yeah,
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 so I think they're a really good example of how they kind of create, and I know it's kind of products over brands, but they're almost in its own right. So I think they're a
yeah.
really good example of how you can create this kind of
It's like a unique identity, isn't it, for each of these
yeah.
strands that come under the branded
But we all,
house.
but
That
we
sort
all
of,
know it's Apple, right?
yeah,
We all know, and I think that is kind of its consistency. It's
mm,
it's a strong visual identity.
yep,
Design, like
yeah,
design. Steve, like he is. So speaking about him like he's my friend, Steve Jobs. His his eye for design. He's got such a good flair. So I think that for me personally, that if you're asking me for my opinion,
yeah.
I would say it is probably about that design, that consistency, that recognition. I
And
think, yeah,
sorry, go on. No,
no,
and
no,
I think that is conversely, applies if you're then in that branded house situation where you've maybe got a corporate brand or an overarching brand, and then let's say you've got four core brands that come under that because they have completely different service offerings, completely different target markets. That I think then there's the strength in the trust piece where you refer to these brands as sister brands, or you have a brand that clearly has an identity that we know that it's connected to the corporate brand. But whichever way you look at it, those core business units, brands then need to have a complete, I guess, unique, solid identity and an
yeah,
individual identity. And I think where brands go wrong is when they grow and they evolve to the state that they are multi-million turnover and they sort of move into this branded house approach, but there's not that clarity, there's not that differentiation between each brand. What's the messaging, what's the target audience,
yes,
how are we, presenting this brand? And so I think it is, as you say, it's all about it's everything: look, feel, design, message, but then also the clarity in that as well. A final question before we leap in specifically to some website design trends, because it's just connected to the first half of the webinar. Do you have any insight on how to build trust effectively and quickly through social media and your website? So specifically building trust. What do you think, Prue?
I could answer this really quickly. Um, People, I think people buy from people, and I think there's quite a lot of different ways. But I think to start with is getting your face out there. People trust people. So yeah, if you can start to do videos, short form videos, I think you can really start to build trust with your community out there. Yeah, in short, video. You're not going to like that answer though, are you?
Brilliant. No, I think it's good. I think it makes total sense. And I think you're absolutely right. I think engaging video content, have you got video content on your website that's human, that's authentic, rather than, I guess, kind of stock imagery and reproduced content? You know, is it human? Is it honest? Is it authentic? And can you very, very quickly have that presence across both your social channels and also on your website? Fab, thank you so much for that, Prue. We'll leap in now a little bit to a little bit more on AI, and then we're going to jump into some of these design trends. So, one thing I want to touch upon, because you know, look, it's 2025, you almost can't do any kind of webinar or marketing webinar without at least touching on AI. What I just want to reference here, though, is kind of the evolving state of AI in marketing, and this is something you need to think about in all of this activity. We've talked a lot about generative AI and you know, creating images, creating content. But the way that brands are engaging and using AI is changing exponentially, right? So if you just look at the next slide, Prue, you know, this is kind of long-term worldwide interest in AI tools, AI tools. Now that's not slowing down. So this is, you know, how you're kind of engaging with and deciding what tools you want to engage with as either a marketing department or a sales department or as a business, from not only a creative and a content generation perspective, but also from a operational and efficiency perspective. So something I just want to share with you, because it can become really overwhelming. You know, we're touching on AI in terms of, you know, other platforms that we are kind of slaves to, if you like Google. But then if you want to make AI work for you, this is a great tool called There Is an AI for That. That helps you build business cases and identify what it is that you want. So have a little look at that. And that's how you can literally find the right kind of AI tools that might match your need, whatever it is that you're trying to do, as I say, as a marketing department or from an operations perspective, or you name it. And then we've supported you here with a bit of a free template where you can map out AI business use cases. So this is super useful. You'll get all of this in the deck afterwards, but have a think about what it is that you're trying to achieve. So come back to some of that stuff that Pri was talking about earlier. You know, what is it that you want to achieve? How do you categorize that? What's the task or the use case? How often do I do this? And then from there, you build it out and you build it out and you build it out until you basically are able to map out a use case and start to focus in your mind in terms of what AI tools you might want to use. Because yeah, we acknowledge it's an overwhelming marketplace out there, and it's moving at such a pace, I think, that it's about taking a step back and looking at it objectively for you as an individual, and then also for your team. So just finally, it's actually good just to reference this. We've already covered this, but just a bit of a visual in terms of Google's AI overview. So interestingly, this came in first in the States and obviously is now prevalent across Google search. Proof, we just jump on to the next slide. And this is what I'm talking about in terms of how it's completely changing the way that we are engaging with search. All of this content you're seeing is AI generated before you get down to sponsored content and ads, and then eventually you start to hit organic search results. So this isn't going to change. You know, 10 years, not even 10 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I was doing kind of webinars and training sessions and client meetings where I was talking about how things like Google Business Profile and snippets were starting to push down kind of organic search content. Fast forward 5 or 6 years, that's just increased. It's just increasing, you know. So the way that we're engaging with Google is changing dramatically, and this is just a bit of a visual example of some of the things that we've already touched upon. Good. So let's now jump in a bit more to kind of design and website trends and how we can apply some of this or consider some of these aspects for our website in 2025. So some key considerations just to kind of kick us off. First and foremost, we have to be thinking about our audience, who it is that we're trying to resonate with, what's their needs and wants. Are we building customer profiles, you know, giving people names? I work with a brand where their profile was Sam. That was the person. That was the person that buys from them. Let's build everything to engage with and basically sell to Sam and make sure that we're considering that target audience at all time. We need to think about device types and how consumers are changing how they're engaging with websites. Functionality with that in mind and website functionality has become more important than ever. Minimalism is a major kind of trend, which I'll touch upon with some specifics shortly, but think simplicity. You know, we've got content coming out of our ears, you know, you can't avoid content. Forgive me if anybody's heard me say this before because it's one of my favorite quotes, but the average person now consumes more content in a weekday edition of the New York Times than a person did in their entire lifetime in medieval England. That's how much things have changed. Like we weren't built to consume this level of content, but now we are. So think about short form content, think about minimalism, think about simplicity, because we're engaging with content in a completely different manner. Are designs responsive? Are they responsive on devices and on mobile? Speed optimization and core web vitals has become really, really important. It's now a major factor in terms of how websites are being ranked. Is am I meeting what's called Google's core web vitals? Are my images loading fast enough? Is content loading fast enough? Is the content loaded before somebody gets there on the scroll? All of these things. And then mobile first, which is still a ranking factor. So even if consumers aren't necessarily engaging with your website on mobile first, Google is considering how your website performs on mobile in terms of how it then ranks it on Google. So when you're then thinking about your audience, again, break that down: age, gender, job, interests, buying habits, and just have that reset moment and go, is my brand's or our brand's online experience delivering to that audience? Because as audiences evolve and change, you need to make sure that your website and your online presence is evolving and changing as well. And consider that buyer fatigue. This is very, very real, okay? It's very real from a B2C perspective and also from a B2B perspective. Sales processes, decision-making processes are much, much longer for a number of reasons. We've been going through economic change, cost of living crisis, brands that have had ambitious plans that they may not have met and that they're needing to sort of alter and adjust budgets. All of that brings with it a degree of decision-making fatigue. More people are involved in the decision-making process: managers, director level, chief financial officer. Think about if you have a website and an online presence that is then serving those different segments of the DMU, the decision-making unit. Am I giving them information at the right stages? Am I nurturing and sort of building a series of content and an online presence that's going to meet that need? So again, think then about those target customers and what is their role in that decision-making process. Do they want or need lots of information, perhaps to talk to somebody, value to help them make that purchase? And then consider that whole user experience and online content to make sure that you're not just pleasing one and you're not pleasing the masses, but that you are pleasing the segments of the market that you need to engage with and that you need to please. And another thing to consider in mind with all of that is accessibility. Like accessibility has become really important. Are your font sizes reaching minimum standards? Do your color combinations work? It's all over the press that it's funny. It's a non-story, but I'm a Welshman, so obviously loving the rugby at the moment and the Six Nations. And Ireland are playing Wales this weekend. Ireland are playing in white. It's the first time Ireland are playing in white against Wales, and it's to do with the color combination. And for those who are colorblind, the combination of the green and red means that you can't identify changes in the team. So it's taken years to get to this place. But now Ireland are playing in white, Wales will probably be playing in red. But again, think about this online. So we're now looking at that, and it's interesting. We've had to feed back to clients with some fantastic brands and brand identities, but you know what? That text on that color, it doesn't meet accessibility standards. So even if we might glance at it and think, yeah, that looks okay, if it doesn't meet accessibility standards, you really need to consider that in terms of brand identity and how your brand translates into your website presence. And there's a Chrome extension there. There'll be a link that you can access all of this in the deck and the follow-up, but which can give you kind of reports, and it's like a Chrome extension. But again, shameless plug, if your website then doesn't meet those accessibility standards, chat to us because we can support you in those areas and make sure that you have a website that does. Fab. So I'm now going to break down each one of these design trends for the last kind of quarter of an hour of this session, which are current design trends that we see and that we're building and that we see a need for in the marketplace, and kind of the changing face of websites and how websites look and feel to customers. And those design trends are dark mode, parallax scrolling, radiance, glass morphism, hand-drawn content, variable fonts, full page headers, and immersive UX. A couple of techie words in there, but I'm not a techie person, so we'll go through them and we'll humanize them, and we'll make sure that we give you some visual examples as well. So dark mode, it's just something we need to consider, right? So what you got to think about is that consumers are engaging with content around the clock now. So again, B2C, B2C, sorry, B2C and B2B. Um, you know, people are doing some of their most searching at like 6 a.m. in the morning before doing the school run, or 10 o'clock at night lying in bed. And dark mode has become much, much more popular in terms of how consumers are engaging with content. They can also force change on devices to make sure that websites are appearing in dark mode. So think about that as being the mode of choice for a much larger proportion of website users. So consider how your website appears in dark mode. Maybe take a look at it. Make sure that you've got visuals and graphics and you name it that's kind of complementary to that, and consider that some consumers might not be seeing your website as you are looking at it on a daily basis. And that's the same when we talk about devices. You know, are you considering how it appears on a tablet? You know, people's laptop behaviors are changing. More and more people are moving to tablets even instead of laptops. So think about that kind of portrait, landscape, everything. But dark mode needs to start to come into that mix. And if you, as I say, if you have those features, those graphics, and those visuals that lend themselves well to that appearance. Now, we've got a slightly controversial view on this, and I've actually got a website in a moment that uses a bit of parallax, but parallax scrolling is when you have these kind of different pace and movement of foregrounds and backgrounds on websites. This is a bit of a sort of an example on the right, but you might see websites where you kind of go and scroll and you go to engage with content. And then as you kind of scroll down or scroll across, you have these different paces and speeds and ways of movement across that top header. It is quite dynamic, and I'd suggest that it's quite an immersive web design choice. It does make it feel a little bit more multi-dimensional. But we've actually had brands come to us. So even though this is actually still seen widely as a sort of a moving design trend, we've had brands come to us because they wanted to move away from parallax scrolling, which is interesting. So brands are coming to us with these kinds of features and designs, but it's what they're moving away from, some of the other design trends that I'm going to come on to in a moment. So that's just a bit of insight from us as an agency. So whilst this is seen as something that's still quite popular, we're not necessarily recommending it as perhaps a design of choice. And as I say, we're seeing brands that are actually moving away from this style. But it might be more suited if you have a website that's engaging, dynamic, playful, maybe kind of immersive, and you're looking for an immersive choice. But yeah, consider if it's going to be future-proof enough, or if it's a strong reflection of your brand, yeah, and your brand identity. Something that we're seeing and doing more and more is these kind of vibrant gradients. So gradient colors on websites. I think it matches and meets what I talked about earlier, a little bit about minimalism. So if you look at this kind of visual example on the right-hand side, that's actually quite a minimalist design. There's kind of a strong brand identity there. It's quite text heavy, but it's very, very simplistic. What that means is that the colors and the gradient is sort of taking center stage. It's very, very bold. It's very, very eye-catching. You start to associate it with the brand. So it's good for kind of dynamic or more creative brands. But what you do need to think about is not losing brand identity. So when you're working with a designer or a web designer or a web design agency, you want to make sure, yes, as the note says in the middle there, accessibility again. You know, we've got these changing colors. It makes it slightly more challenging from a text perspective to make sure that you've got that contrast for accessibility. But think as well that you're retaining some of those core brand colors, that core brand identity, and that you're not losing that in the noise of these gradients. So you need to make sure that it's complementary and it doesn't detract from your core brand identity. So there's a challenge there, but a good web designer can do that very, very effectively. There are some tools there for vibrant gradients. So again, the links will be in the follow-up. Color Designer and Gradient Generator. It's something to start having a play with, even if you're part of a marketing team and you want to kind of sell this vision internally before it's something that you move towards. You can start to use these tools to get a feel using kind of hex and color codes to be able to sort of identify some of these gradients and how it might work within your brand identity. Something leading on from that, which is very, very popular, and we've actually literally just designed a website using this style at the request of the client, is glass morphism. So it's kind of, it sounds like a really technical word. It's literally like emulating glass effect. It allows for these kind of highly designed backgrounds without losing key messaging. It's quite soft. Again, it's minimalism, it's simplicity, It's just about color and identity rather than lots and lots of kind of images. It adds a degree of texture and depth to the website. We think it's great for kind of tech sites, for anyone looking for an app-like design for their website. We work a lot within B2B and you know, and in kind of cyber tech, SaaS, you know, software as a service. Brands tend to find that the generation of content for what they do is not always that easy. So what you then need to think about is coming back to the audience. How do I want to make my audience feel? Okay. How do I want to make the audience feel? So there's a really interesting thing on that, whereby if you watch a perfume advert, I think perfume and aftershave adverts look a bit ridiculous. Like you often watch them, you think, you know, what is all this and how is this connected to a perfume? Same with cars. You watch a car ad and then you go, God, how was that last minute actually connected to the fact that that's a car? And, you know, does it have 5 doors and a steering wheel? And it's because of the relationship between what we see and the other senses. So perfume ads very, very carefully build adverts to give you a sense of feeling, whether you realize it or not subconsciously, that is also associated with a type of smell. Now, that's a very tenuous connection to what I'm saying here, which is think about how color, gradients, glass morphism, design, how that can make the consumer feel as opposed to telling them how to feel. And if it's the right kind of look and feel in terms of brand colors, brand sentiment, and the type of website. So glass morphism is a trend that we don't see going away anytime soon. Another one which is interesting is kind of graphics, but also hand drawn and kind of illustration type effects. That's something that we're actually seeing more and more. I think maybe AI and the use of AI and content generating tools can also be leading to this. Things are becoming much more accessible for brands without needing to be at a significant budget. And that's not me putting aside the talent of people that are able to do this type of work from scratch. But I do think that we're seeing it more and more. It's engaging, it's quite whimsical, it's authentic, it's unique. We would suggest it tends to work better for perhaps smaller or more personal brands, but it is something that is a general website design trend and that you see a lot of brands moving to. And again, I would suggest is if they don't have a huge amount of video or person-centered content, but they want to find creative and dynamic ways to kind of explain, to provide information, to again, give a feel, but using hand-drawn style illustrations. I've had a great question come through on a specific design, so I'll make sure we tackle that. I'll make sure we tackle that at the end. Something else to consider: variable fonts. So again, more control over typeface styling, creating engaging environments through text, lower file size. Think about if you're somebody who's a part of or in charge of your brand guidelines. Again, think about if those brand guidelines need opening up a little bit. So what do I mean by that? Well, traditionally, it was very, very straightforward, whereby a set of brand guidelines was, this is our color, this is our primary color, this is our secondary color, this is our tertiary color, maybe. This is our font. We use this font for headings. We use this font for copy. Well, coming back to what we were saying about content and content consumption, have you got guidelines that branch out beyond that to social media channels? This is the style we use on Instagram. This is the choice we make on subtitles on LinkedIn, you know, and maybe you need a bit more diversification in terms of brand fonts and brand identity, because your brand is now spread across so many channels. So think about if there's then that opportunity for kind of variable fonts and a bit of dynamism on your website. Again, we need to hold people's attention because the attention isn't there. So have you got complementary styles that can kind of create engaging environments through a text rather than people scrolling through reams of copy? Have a scroll. And if you've scrolled once or twice and you haven't hit enough variety, maybe it's because there's just not enough variety on your website. So have a little think about that. And if you need to kind of shake things up a little bit. So I know I'm whizzing through, but there's just, I just want to give you all this insight. And then, yeah, there's a lot of kind of things we want to highlight. Something that, again, I think is actually really effective and isn't going away anytime soon is kind of full page headers. So we're seeing that more and more. So it's obviously for years we've had kind of header imagery, kind of a banner at the top of a website, maybe with a key message or even a call to action. But what we're seeing more and more now is that full page header. So literally a header image that fills the screen. Bang, it just catches you. So we designed this website on the right, but what you can see is that there's no CTA on there. There's no, this is actually video content, but it's a full page video content. And then as you scroll, you meet the copy, you meet the content, you meet everything that comes underneath. Now that's, again, it comes back to what I said earlier about minimalism. It's actually very simplistic. But when I would say that this is effective is that you need to have strong visuals or content to encourage the scroll below the fold being that kind of first scroll. So if you don't have that kind of dynamic, engaging visual content, maybe this style isn't quite right. And if you want to have a banner image, maybe that needs to be more of a half page and on mobile as well, so that you're seeing more of the copy and you're seeing more of the content below that point. But do think that if you've got visual dynamic imagery, hit people with that on the core, screen. Fill the screen with it and encourage that scroll so that they then start to engage below that point. So immersion as well. People love experiences, people love deep levels of engagement, and people are now expecting websites to be more immersive. There are multiple ways that you can make your website immersive. Maybe it's through visual content, photography. I'm not sure if you're familiar with things like Matterport photography that's been around for a long time now, where you can have walkthroughs and kind of walk through experiences in places. But if you're in retail, kind of augmented reality and virtual reality is becoming huge now in those sectors. So what's the shopping experience like? Can you create that into an immersive experience? But something else to think about is micro interactions. So what does that mean? Well, I just grabbed a graphic that lent itself well to micro interactions that you can see on the right-hand side. Imagine if every one of those little symbols, every one of those little features were clickable and took you through to content, took you through to some information or a pop-up. Think about how you can keep people engaged on a website. Do you have enough interactions? You don't just have those 3 core call to actions on a website. Do you have lots of micro points where people can engage and click through and take an action? Think as well about gamification. Spin the wheel for reductions, get 10% off or a free something or other. And consumers love this because they feel like they're part of the process. They don't feel like they're being spoken to. They feel like they're doing something, that they're doing something active, and that they're part of that engagement with your website. So again, maybe think about if an immersive trend is the direction that you need to go down. Just a tool I want to leave you with before I go on to the last bit is about, we've talked a lot about kind of how these different designs impact things like your colors, gradients. We talked about, glass morphism. We've got some color palette tools in there for you as well. So if you are looking to open up your brand guidelines or work with your marketing team or another agency on a rebrand, you can start to think about complementary colors and ways to kind of build out your brand identity beyond just that one core, color. So they'll be in the follow-up as well. Finally, yes, great question. Yeah, I'll cover all these questions straight after now. So, and we will stay on for a couple of minutes after for Q&A after the 11 o'clock. One thing to remember, though, I've given you all these lovely design things. Make it work before you make it pretty. Okay, make sure the website functions, that it meets the needs of the customer, that you've got the right information across, and from there, build it into a beautiful website. I'm going to quickly show you a quick demo. Not going to pass a huge comment on this, but this is a website, and this is me trying to navigate that website. It's quite challenging, moving through. We've got a huge amount of features, but in terms of where to go and what to do, now that might be an active choice from this brand to be a little bit controversial, to give you a different type of experience, but navigating and finding ways to get from A to B to basically book a meal or inquire brings with it a certain type of journey on this website. And what you need to consider is that whilst you can have all of this different level of functionality, all of this different level of creativity, think about the objective. What is it that you want somebody to achieve? Getting from A to B. Are they navigating through the website effectively? Is the structure in place? Is the content in place? Is that user journey working for the brand, and is it effective? And you just need to consider that, and then kind of take it from there. Fab. So some key takeaways, and then we're going to jump into a few of these questions. So consider the balance of creativity, brand, and functionality. So again, where's that balance in terms of the user journey, how to engage the brand, and ultimately the functionality of that? Consider which trends and movements are right for your brand. It's not one size fits all. So again, if you're an information heavy website whereby the decision making is slow, consider a design that works for that. If you're a think fast e-commerce A to B website, think about if you have a design and a functionality that works for that. User behavior is changing, so consider those thought processes, the need for content and for information, and ultimately experiment and explore. You know, a good design agency, website design, will not just give you one route. They won't just say this is the route. You know, they'll take everything from you. This is what we do. We find out exactly what it is that you need and want from your website, what you like, what you don't like, what the brand is hoping to achieve, and then you start to build out design routes that meet that. So you can start to explore these different ways so that you have a website that's the right fit. Good. So we're going to fire through some questions now. Thank you to everyone who's joined. What we will do as well, I will make sure we send a link across. We're about to launch future webinars. So we've got some forthcoming webinars in March as well. I'll make sure we get all the information over for that. Some questions. So first question, Prue, love to know your thoughts on this. So how would you design for a company selling kind of video, photo, drone services, mainly images or text explaining? So what are your thoughts? I mean, there's so many different ways to approach that, but obviously that's quite a creative visual sector. What's your view on that?
Can you say it again? Sorry, Dan.
Yeah,
Say it
yeah,
again.
sure. So designing for a company selling video, photo, and drone services, you know, like drone videography or drone imagery.
Yeah. I guess it's difficult. I think when it comes to branding, I tend to get to know the identity of the brand. So like things like getting to know what they value, color theory comes into it. I guess it's hard without actually having like a good old chat with the person who's answering the question.
Yeah,
But I guess color theory would be something that I'd look at. So when we do branding, it's really important that you kind of, like blue, for example, it can kind of encompass like trust, and a lot of banks are kind of blue, and then you look at kind
mm,
of colors like green, like Wagner's green, it's like organic, there's money, so there's a lot of associations. So I
mm,
guess you probably want a really quick short answer, but I guess it would be finding your USP, what makes you different,
yeah,
looking at competitors, what they're doing, and for me, it's like looking at what they're doing, and then how can I do that better? How can I
yeah.
stand out? Yeah,
You could go for some really creative, like engaging visual content as well, couldn't you? Because if you think about like drone photography and overhead photography, if you've got the right kind of imagery as well, you could actually have some of those micro interactions on an image. You know, you could click on maybe different elements that could take you through to different things. If you had almost like a bird's eye view and I don't know,
yeah,
different
definitely,
types
yeah,
of
definitely.
businesses, and you could click on those businesses and find out how the solution works. Or I don't know, if you took a bird's eye view of a wedding venue, if the brand does wedding venue videography, and then you click through there and find, I think you could do some quite interesting
Micro
creative
macro
visual
stuff.
content.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think, yeah, now that you've said that, yeah, the your product that you're working with and what
yeah,
you can produce with that product should help to sell that product. So yeah, my degree is actually in photography, and I'm really interested in
mm,
videography and
mm,
photography, and I've got a drone. So I guess, yeah, it's showing people like how your
mm,
product is so much better, and I guess
yeah,
that would be through the photos and the videos, and yeah,
yeah.
showing the user how
Showing
they
rather
can
than
make their
telling.
art. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's quite cool. And like you say, like with that interactive element, yeah, I can kind of see it now. You almost have, maybe you kind of, your website is, like you say, it is a place that you can kind of go through, and maybe you can then show what, because are you selling like lighting and audio and things like that?
mm,
So maybe
mm,
you can use
mm,
your other products to yeah, be more
mm.
immersive with that. Thanks,
Great,
Dan.
great point. Yeah, no, really good point. So we've got here, does having a more engaging website move you up the list on a Google search? That's a great question. Well, is there a simple answer? The truth is that, so is it okay? So that if you have an engaging website, that will in itself suggest that you have rich content, depth of content, a good user journey, a clear site structure, easily navigatable, with a variety of content. The answer is if you build a website in that way, then absolutely that will all lend itself to much stronger Google search rankings. You think about some of the examples we've talked about there, and I've always brought it back to kind of user journey, and is that a very clear and defined path, either through micro interactions or your main navigation menu, or how content is structured? All of those things, yes, do lend themselves to the algorithm and how Google will be kind of crawling and reading and looking at your website rather than just blocks of copy, for example. Obviously, there are brands that will always buck the rule on that, and their website will have a high domain authority, and there's all these other factors at play. But ultimately, you do need to consider the depth of content and how you want to build that out in order to the depth of content in order to better improve your search visibility.
I guess as well as a way of looking at it is that if your website isn't engaging, if it's not keeping your audience there, then Google will go, actually, this website isn't doing what, it's
Yeah,
not doing a good job. So I guess there's that in there as well, isn't it? It's like not just having good content, but yeah, making sure it's not bad content so that
it's
people
like
are
the
staying there.
six degrees of separation or whatever. It's the knock-on effects of this stuff. It's the touch points. And if you get the fundamentals right, then everything else follows, doesn't it? I think that makes total sense. Um, we've had a question about how much experience the team has on working in a specific. Yeah, we've got experience across a whole range of different platforms. I can reach out to that person specifically, give you a little bit more insight on that. We've built e-commerce websites, B2B websites, information-driven websites. So yeah, I can certainly reach out to you on and give you a little bit more insight on that. Limited to no budget. Okay, so on a low budget, measuring the impact and engagement of our website. Prue, do you have any thoughts on that? Measuring, how people engage with the website when you're working on a relatively limited budget?
Yeah, I mean, Google Analytics is free, right?
Yeah,
So you can see how people are engaging with that, and there's quite a lot of different free tools out there as well. And I think you don't need to be a £1 million agency to find out how people are responding with your website. I
yeah,
think I've done in the past. I've actually done. I've got a group of real life people. So yes, you can look at Google Analytics, but I've
yeah.
also got a group of real life people to come in and tell me what they think of the website and is it functional for them and things like that. So
That's
there
so
are.
true, actually, having a
Yeah,
nice little focus group that you can call
yeah,
upon as well
actual
to,
people that you can talk to. It's quite
yeah,
nice in this age, this day and age.
yeah. And GA can still be a little bit overwhelming, but I guess training, resources,
There's so
upskilling to
much,
then
yeah.
engage with that free content.
There's so much training on GA4. You like Google's great for that. They want you to use their product. So any kind of issues,
Mm,
yeah, you can Google
mm,
how to use Google. So it's all
yeah.
good.
Question as well then about search visibility and appearing higher up on searches. There are so many, genuinely, there are so many different factors to consider. If you take a look actually on our website and go on resources, you'll see a lot of historic webinars and webinar content, and there's some on there that is very specifically about SEO, SEO tactics, up-to-date SEO trends and SEO tactics. I guess one little tip I'd leave you with is to make content engaging and trustworthy. And yes, considering kind of keywords and keyword targeting, but start with the fundamentals of strong, engaging copy and content that conveys a good message and that's very clear with clearly defined pages with different focus areas. That is the foundation 101. And then from there, you target your page titles, your meta tags, all this lovely SEO stuff. But again, we've got a lot of tutorial content on the website that'll help with that. Do you have any design tips that will help our products feature on SERPs? That's a great question. Um, it's really so much of that is so there's actually there's actually technical SEO tips on that as well. Things like what's called schema markup. Have you got the right schema markup on your website to clearly identify if you're an e-commerce brand and you deal in products? It's not just about the copy on the page. Have we got the right schema markup in place, as it's called, which is where there's that all in the code really that kind of demonstrates exactly what a product is and to sort of improve search engine results, as well as obviously considering things like Google Shopping ads, because now in terms of getting those products at the top, Google Shopping ads is what has that real estate above kind of anything else. Beyond that, then you do need to think about like site structure, site hierarchy. If you're dealing in an e-commerce website, have you got very clearly defined categories and subcategories and products? Does your URL structure then match that? What we see a lot, and we see this with big e-commerce brands, right? Not just startups, is that especially as an e-commerce brand grows over time or it adopts a wider product offering, the site structure can really become a mess. URL structures for different areas of a store, an online store, become wildly different, and that can start to lead to quite negative kind of SEO impact. So there are so many things to think about to give your products a better chance, but site structure, site hierarchy, content on the page, and then technical SEO. And again, that all feeds into design in terms of the user experience and the site structure. But I would say that's what's key, and or the biggest mistakes from an e-commerce perspective with products is for that site structure to go a little bit wild. So just think about if that's in place. And again, good SEO agency like Wagner Digital can do a full technical audit and support you in all of that and give you the guidance in terms of what might need to be done in order to improve in that area. Fab. So we're out of time. I'll just give it a second in case anybody has any final questions. No. Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you so much, folks, for joining. If you've enjoyed this webinar, it's completely free of charge. When we send the follow-up, we'll send a little link so that if you did want to leave us a review on Google, that would obviously be very much appreciated, or across any of our other online channels. Or don't hesitate to shout out about us on LinkedIn. That goes a long way as well. So let everybody know that you've had a fantastic experience. Look, there's been some great insight in there, hopefully. A lot that you can take away with you. Some lovely messages coming through to me privately and also in the chat. So I'm so glad that you found the session beneficial. Huge thank you, Prue, for everything that you shared as well.
Thanks, everyone.
Absolutely brilliant. So listen, guys, have a great rest of the day. When it does come around, have a lovely weekend. Best of luck with your brand journey, your brand direction. Best of luck with your website. And if you need anything, we're here to help. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to have a chat. All right. Cheers, everybody. Have a great rest of the day and
Cheers.
very best of luck. Bye,
Bye,
folks.
everyone. Bye-bye.